Right, it's now 3 minutes past 7, and we'll probably get started. So welcome everybody to the third of our first 5 locum support webinars. And this one's entitled Finding Work as a Locum GP, Tips and Advice. Now, hopefully you can all hear me, and we have the chat box. So if you are struggling or any particular problems, please pop it in there and we will be able to, we'll hopefully be able to support you with that. Right, and this locum is brought to you by the RCGP First 5 National Committee, and I hope you enjoy it. Right, so my name's James Waldron. I'm a GP in Nottingham and the RCGP First 5 co-lead in the Vale of Trent, as well as the co-lead in the First 5 community. And joining us, but quietly in the background, is Dr. Azza, who is the RCGP First 5 in Yorkshire and the co-lead with myself for the First 5 community. And she's done a huge amount of work behind the scenes here. So thank you so much, Azza. It's been really fantastic, and thank you for helping this happen. So how things will work today, we're going to have Q&A throughout this. So please, there's a Q&A box at the bottom, so give that a click, write your questions in. We can also have lots of comments in the chat box as well, but pop it in the Q&A and we'll do our best to get to it during our talk. We're also going to have, actually before that though, or during that, we're going to have a bit of a conversation on this topic today. We're going to run it more of a sort of an interview discussion about the topic of finding work. We'll have a bit of feedback at the end. And then we'll sort of collate that and see what else that we can provide you, because it's really important that we provide the support that you guys need, and we're open to suggestions to make things bespoke for you. So a bit of a background about this. The RCGP and the First 5 committee know that a lot of our members are in the locum workspace, and the early parts of your career can be quite daunting, and COVID has very much changed things and made things much more challenging and much more complex to find work and to secure work, and can also just make things more nerve-wracking when you're approaching into this workplace. And we really want to support that. And thus this series of webinars is to help you with all of that. And this evening is about just us sharing some top tips. We've brought in an expert to help share some of her tips as well, and really help serve you as the First 5 group. So thank you for coming, and hopefully this is going to be useful for you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce, joining us today, Dr. Serena Chiba.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, who is the founder of My Locum, or co-founder of My Locum Manager, First 5 GP, and absolutely wonderful, has joined us on all 3 of these webinars, and is going to help take us through this topic today. So which is a little bit of a screen share swapping, so yeah. we'll get cracking.
Okay, so if you stop your
there we go
screen share, and I will load up my slides. There we go. So can you all see? Yeah, you can all see that, right? Brilliant. So James and I and Azza were thinking about kind of what questions have been coming up from locum GPs or people that are CCTing. And so what we've done is we've put together some top tips about finding work in this current time, especially if you're about to CCT and you've not had any experience with that. Mm-hmm. And as James said, we want it to be interactive. So it'd be really good if in the chat box you guys can put, are you ST3s, or are you first, are you seasoned locums, or are you where are you in that journey? Because then we can make sure the content that we deliver is relevant for you guys. And also ask any questions that you need help with, because all of us actually work on lots of other projects involved with recruitment, portfolio quiz, and lots of different things. So I'm hoping that by the end of it, you'll find it really useful. So just this is a snapshot of my CV and the things that I do. So I co-founded a popular software that's used by locum GPs called My Locum Manager, and I'm a presenter for Redwell. I'm Macmillan GP in Hounslow, and I've been involved, I'm a writer for Pulse, and I've been involved in GP education medical student education with King's College and Imperial College London as well. And actually, for those of you that are looking to start work, the medical schools would be a really good point to start, actually, if you want to look for some non-clinical stuff from September. Okay, James, a bit about you.
Yeah, so my portfolio is not quite as impressive as Serena's, but this diagram and again the beard in the photograph shows how much things have changed throughout COVID, because that's been a casualty for me. But actually, I think it's this idea of a wiggly career, as we mentioned in the last webinar, and this has been. If you mind going back one, please.
Oh, sorry, was that me? Sorry, I just that question popped up.
A bit of a wiggly career, and actually, the point at which I've got to my portfolio career has been via a lot of locuming and the flexibility that offered, but also via lots of twists and turns to try and figure out where I want to be, to put myself into this really interesting position that I am at the moment, with all the different bits and pieces I do. And, and as you can see at the bottom of the screen, lots of stuff that I've done has linked to other things, and locuming really helped with that. And now I'm working as a salaried, but the flexibility that's inherent in general practice has been really key to where I've ended up. And if on the next slide is essentially what I'm doing at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, the chat's coming up, stopping me pressing.
Right. Essentially, I'm a salaried and a little bit of locuming at the moment, sort of as my base. But I work for the training hub in education and sort of development. Some First5 work with the ICS and supporting the workforce there. Work with the Phoenix program, which is about supporting newly qualified GPs, and a glide path for GP trainees into the early world of work. I also work with the RCGP, and Next Generation GP and the leadership opportunities that offers, and they're really, really great. And there's a webinar straight after this one, if some people may be logged onto that. And also been doing a little bit of YouTubing as well, trying to get on top of that. That's a top tips for getting started from working at home. So sort of diversifying at the moment, but keeping myself quite busy.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about initially is kind of what you need to think about with regards to finding work, different types of work. So obviously there's lots of different ways you can work. So if you're a locum GP, you're not necessarily just doing pure locums. And one of the questions in the chat, so I should just probably say you can send anonymous messages in the chat if you don't feel comfortable putting it on a public forum. So do ask your questions. But one of the questions that came through was, can you do locum work at a practice where you're salaried? And the answer is you can, but there are tax implications, because what the HMRC changed in the last 2 years was a legislation called IR35 legislation, which essentially means if you're working as if you're employed somewhere, you have to be taxed at source, which means your tax contributions, your tax and your national insurance contributions are taken before you receive your salary, a bit like you do as a salary GP. So you can locum where you are salaried, but when you are paid, you're paid on payroll. So you'll have your tax and national insurance contributions deducted, and then you will receive your salary. So you can do it, but there are those tax implications. So you might take it. Yes.
Part of the complexities of working as a locum doctor and getting on top of that, the money side of things was quite a wrench to start off with, and where my locum manager actually was really helpful.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Jane. So I think so one thing I would say is, if you're a salaried GP and you're interested in locuming, you're in a really strong position, because although there's tax implications for you working at your own practice, other local practices will know you as a salary GP at Dr. So-and-so's down the road, and they're more likely for you, because you know that patient population, you know all the referral processes in the area, so you can very easily find work at neighbouring practices in a locum capacity and not have those tax implications, but just not do it at your own practice, or do it and just take, get paid, but the practice manager will pay you on payroll essentially for the additional sessions that you do. And then there's also other types of portfolio roles, being a partner, and a sessional GP is actually a salary GP that does locum work, or you can do pure locum work. So there's lots of different types of work you may find, and you may be branching out to as a locum. I mean, I purely locum. Well, actually, I'm more of a portfolio GP, so I do locum work, and then I have other roles that I do. But you know, you might fall into one of these.
Yeah, with the other roles, actually, locuming can be really helpful because, you know, if you've got a particular thing you need to deliver or a conference or something like this you're speaking at, actually, then you can arrange your workload around it. And you know, as an idea for why it's so helpful, that was one of the main reasons I went into locuming initially. But I think probably one of the things that you've sort of explained there is the way that you can in fact combine any of these things, you know, being salaried and locum, as well as a partner at one place and, you know, a portfolio with other respects. And I think this kind of, you know, hybrid is becoming more and more common because general practice is so flexible. It's about finding your little niche, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think going for, like, currently we're going to talk about the recruitment issues and the work situation with COVID. And you know, some people have been thinking, well, should I take on a salaried role for 2 days a week and then do some locum on top and have maybe a stable income with my locum income? And that's totally fine as long as you're doing the job for the right kind of reasons and you're not just taking a job anywhere because you're panicking. Because if you taken on a salary job, you've signed a contract and you're expected to work to that contract. So you can definitely do that. But I think here, this slide is all about thinking about how you make those choices about finding the right type of job. So I was going to ask James to talk about knowing what's a fair contract. And before I do that, I thought what I would mention is you may be in situations where you might have the opportunity to do a locum shift and it's like, I don't know, the pricing of it seems really out of proportion of what the usual market forces are. So it might be very low or it might be very high. And if it's very high, you need to ask yourself, why is that? Because, you know, all three of us were having a conversation about situations where locums got, you know, a very high rate, like £90 an hour, £100 an hour, and ended up being the only GP in the building supervising, you know, non-doctor staff and just finding themselves in very tight situations. And on the other side of it, I think some people were saying in the previous webinars that we ran, like, well, should I just reduce my rates and just try and find anything? Can we, you know, I think there's a balance because there is a market rate. And I think if you're working at the market rate, there's no need for you to reduce it. But I will say that in one of the practices where I worked regularly, it's a very small practice and they could only ever afford 75 an hour plus pension. But I worked there because it's small, lovely, friendly. The patients are really nice. The admin team is just so super organized that actually I have very little paperwork there. We all have a team lunch on the days that I'm there. And it's just a really nice place to work. So and also they offer me all their regular sessions. So I don't have to do like 2 hours here, 2 hours somewhere else. I do like usually, you know, half a day there, a few days a week. And it's a regular steady income. So when I looked at it like that, I thought, you know what, that's a fair price. And so I took it. I didn't think like, oh, I'm going to negotiate hard and stuff. And I mean, James, what would you say about that?
In terms of trying to find the right practice?
Thinking about the rate.
Yeah, I think the rate depends on area. It depends on the people that or at least the populations that you're working with. I certainly think practices know the ups and downs, the ins and outs of their areas. And there was one place that I agreed to work, and it was a good rate, and I was offered smaller clinics, and then you very rapidly realise that it was a very challenging place to work. But that was sort of reflected by the amount that you sort of negotiated. And certainly, so also some of the comments that have come through as well of people saying that, you know, they're ending up at a place and they're trying to see very large numbers of people despite having to wear new PPE for each person. And I think that's a lot about negotiating and about knowing what you would find acceptable. And what you ask from them, and remember, this is still a two-way thing. Even when the market is a bit low, you work in a secure way, and you're comfortable, and you're getting a fair deal. Because ultimately, these relationships, and I think really something we're going to come onto a bit later, building these relationships with practices works both ways. You know, if you're good to them, they'll be good to you, and vice versa.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Okay, so for those of you that are new, as in you're going to be CCTing and looking for work, you definitely need to get this list of documents in order. And one of the things we're going to talk about is starting to be more proactive in finding work, particularly if you've been locuming up until now and now work has really dried up. Going forwards, and we were talking about this earlier, winter pressures are only 2.5 months away. That's not a long time. And
No.
although, yes, it's quiet, like now's the time to start sowing those seeds, building those relationships, so that when it gets busy, you will be super busy, but not be outdone by somebody that's taken up more proactive steps, leaving you kind of waiting around still looking for work. So I definitely think it's going to get, it is busier now in general. My husband's a partner in a practice, and he's saying, it's getting so busy now. And a lot of the partners and salary GPs are really tired, and they'll be booking leave from August and September, which means they'll be looking for locums. So this list of documents is really key for you to get together and to email along with your availability to your local practices in the areas that you want to work, so that you're first off the bat for any work that's going to be coming up soon. So James, you wanted to say something about the CV side of things, didn't you?
Yeah, so we've been doing some discussions with some of the VTS groups recently, and writing CV is something I understand actually not necessarily people think about that they might need, or certainly have an up-to-date one. But I think it's really important so that in a snapshot you can let people know who you are and sort of what your value is to them. You are showing them why you are the right person to work at their place. And it's really important, and it's worth putting some time into as well, that it is easy to read, that it is well laid out, that it includes the right information. But I think there is no specific right or wrong way to do a CV, and you'll read lots of different things, and about how long it should be, how short it should be. But in general, we've got lots of strings to our bows. We've got lots of things that make us and make us good people to work with, and thus including that is okay, even if it runs over. Just make it nice and clear, and people can read the things that they want to. I was actually going to say, with all of these documents, I've managed to condense. I keep them condensed on a single PDF, so which I sort of update, and at which point it becomes very easy to send it. So like a multi-page PDF that makes it a nice, easy attachment. It's not 25 megabytes to gum up somebody's inbox, but actually you can have all these bits and pieces, and then you can update your CV as new things happen. But I definitely would recommend keeping it. And the interesting good side effect of writing a CV is it actually helps you take stock of your achievements and how far you've come, and it can be quite a sort of a self-affirming process. Not sure if other people have found that, but it was actually writing, I've done this and this.
Yeah, if you'd like, you can download for free on My Locum Manager. It's got a resources section, a CV template that you can just auto-populate. So if you're having trouble with your CV, you can do that, or just create something on Word or something like that. But I think if you're looking for something, then you can just put that together.
Somebody's put something up about whether we should have an actual reference or the contact details of our referees.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely worth. So I'd probably put the contact details of the referees on there, but make sure that the referees that you've spoken to have agreed for that to be the case. So on my referees, they are happy for me to put their details and their professional details onto my CVs for people to contact them. But I would recommend that depending on which job you're applying for, you may want to alter your CVs. You're applying for an education job and you've had somebody that's been educationally very important recently. That's a much better person than, say, your educational supervisor, who may be willing to give you a very good reference, but actually if they're asking for specific skills, just think about who might be a referee for you. So you might have several slightly different versions of your CV to send to people.
And there's another question about, so the template that I was talking about is a 2-page template. I think you'd struggle on one page to really put as much information that you'd require. So I think it would be 2. So the CV template that I've created, it starts with career aspirations, because I really needed to plan my next kind of 3 to 5 years and think about, because I'd already told myself I'm only going to do stuff I enjoy doing. So in my career aspirations, I put what I would like to develop, from CCT over the next few years. And then actually now I look back and I've actually achieved those things and I've done those things because in a way I committed them to paper. So it starts with career aspirations and it goes through like professional details, skills and things like that. So you can put it in any way you want, but that's the way I've always structured it. And that's ended up a 2-page document saved, as like James said, as a PDF. Cover letter. Sorry? Yours is 4. Oh, fair enough. You've probably done like so much more than
well,
me.
no, it's more the fact I've so somebody's written something here about a cover letter or a personal statement, and I've got a personal statement which I've written at the beginning, and I've tried to make it sort of as engaging as possible to try and put across a bit of who I am, because ultimately if you're going to be working in a place for a while, they want to know that you are a person that they're going to get on with. And so that I tend to write, I put quite a lot of effort into that opening 5 lines of it. And at the end as well, again, if you're applying for sort of longer term jobs, I put stuff about my activities and interests and try and link it into how that makes me a good person to work with. There's also a page and a half of previous jobs and A&E experience and pediatrics experience, and which you can't really condense down too much.
That's a really good question. How long do you have to work at a surgery to be able to put them down as a reference? I've heard it has to be 6 months.
I don't know that there is a specific time limit. Maybe somebody else knows. Pop it in the chat if you do. I don't think there's a specific one. I think it's just someone that would know you well enough. I think if a GP didn't know you well enough, then I think they probably would say, I'd be unable to give this person a reference.
Yeah. Okay. And I've sent, someone asked for the CV template link. I've put that on, so hopefully everyone can see that so they can download. Okay, cool. So we'll move on, but obviously if you've got any more questions about that, do answer. Okay, so I've shown this slide before, so I'm going to keep it brief so we're not over kind of repeating things. But essentially, a lot of us as locums, and I'm a locum GP, have experienced a shortage of work because of COVID-19. And as a result of, general practice being at pretty much full staff capacity for the last, 4 months now, 5 months now, everything's just become one long lockdown. And also initially dramatically reduced patient demand, there have been reduced work opportunities. But we are coming, I think, to the end of that now, because patient demand is ramping up. And, I have been working over the last few months, and not as much as I did before. But to be honest, I'm using it as a bit of a break because I know winter's going to be really busy. But now the demand is really like all the usual things, doctor, I've got a paper cut. Do I need to come in and have an amputation of my finger? I'm really stressed. I've got this rash. What do you think it is? And all the kind of general stuff that takes up, time and capacity in general practice is starting again now. So things are getting busier. So I'm just going to really summarize these key points in terms of the main impact that's been felt over the COVID period has been particularly new GPs, because they CCT'd and COVID hit and they had no chance of recruitment because practices weren't recruiting for salaried partners or locums. They were just trying to get through the COVID response. In the middle are GPs like me. Basically, I work directly with practices, and to be honest, although I've noticed a reduction in work, I've still been working, and I'm also content with the knowledge that when those practices get busy again, I know I'm going to be their first point of call. So I'm not too worried. But the third group are GPs that have been dependent on agencies for work. And I think they've probably been the most impacted because they're now in a situation where market forces are that there's less work and they're competing for that less work with lots of other GPs. But also because of the terms and conditions they work to, they're banned from contacting those practices directly, even if they've been their only locum for however long. The agencies are like, no, it's got to go through us. Yeah, which is putting a lot of them in a very vulnerable position and financially a very unstable position and creating a lot of stress. So I think if anything that I've learned from this whole pandemic is the importance of being your own backup, like having your own, whichever way, do agency, do whatever you want, but just make sure you've got your own pool there to make sure you're not dependent on anybody, that you can, because being a self-employed person means, like James, you were saying this about the peaks and troughs, and I thought that's really important, a really important point to understand.
Yeah. Well, the fact, so there are going to be good times and there are going to be harder times, and sort of, really capitalizing and looking at what you can do when things are good, and then sort of taking chances to reassess, and perhaps using this opportunity, if you have fallen into this bit of the agency trap, to look at building some of these relationships and planning for the future. And there may be, in fact, some of these things may be opportunities in disguise, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
It's tricky, of course, but it's sort of rolling with that is what we're hoping to help with today, isn't it?
Yeah. And so just to reassure you guys that have been panicking about the lack of locum work and what's going to happen going forward, these are results of a practice manager survey that I did. And on my locum manager, the practices work directly with the locums. There's no agency set up and there's no competition, because you just add your own group of practices and you work for them. So this is about there's about 7,000 practices in total from across the country, so Scotland, Wales, England and Northern Ireland. And these practice managers, essentially, the summary points of this are that, look, things are getting busier. People are going to be going on maternity leave in a few months. Partners and salary GPs are clawing for annual leave and booking it in. So those practices are going to be short of cover. So number 5, I think, highlights what I think the message James and I are trying to say, which is GPs are already starting to get proactive and saying, I'm CCTing in a few months. You're like in my local area, or you're next to my child's school, or you're down the road from my training practice, and I'm looking for work when I qualify, or I'm looking for work now. And James had a really good point about the things you should mention in that email about availability. And James, like, did I? Yeah, you were saying about.
Oh, I remember. Yes. Yeah, or to say, you can send ahead and say that I'm going to be available in this thing in the future. We could even use it with the sort of the agency trap, and saying, like, I've worked for you a while ago. I know that we got on well, but because of the agency situation, I cannot work for you until this date. And from this date onwards, I am available for locum work. Do you have anything? Or please feel free to contact me. So availability, and making sure they've got all the documents up to date, so that when they need it, they go, dear Dr. Smith, here we are. Please come along. Do you want these shifts?
Yeah, and also I think what I'd probably say to that is also add in that there's no booking fee to pay. That you just work directly with them. So how can you find work in this current climate? Summary points. Currently, because of market forces, I would definitely suggest put in the proactive approach and start contacting practices directly. Be patient, though. I don't think you're going to get 100 responses saying, can you work tomorrow, please? But, if you keep in touch and just say, this is my availability, I'm available on these days, I'm local and there's no booking fees to pay. When that practice gets busy, which inevitably they all will, you will be the first point of call. And maybe don't just send one email and don't follow them up. You can send another email in a month's time and just say, I have CCT'd now, and did you get my documents? Do you have any other questions, etc. And by then, actually, things might be more open in terms of being able to visit the practice. And I mean, I did that when I CCT'd. Obviously, that wasn't COVID period, though, so it's slightly different. But I spoke to one of the practice managers, and she said, okay, well, why don't you just pop down and she said, why don't you email me your stuff? And I just thought, I just want to see this practice. So I just said to her, look, can I just come in and hand it in? And she's like, yeah, come in around this time. So I went, and I didn't have childcare that day. So I took my baby in with me. And in the end, I had a great time, because all the receptionists took the baby. The practice manager was like, do you want a cup of tea? We got some biscuits. And I was there for about an hour, like getting childcare, scoffing myself with these biscuits. But then they invited me back, and then I was regularly working there so then they invited me back a month later. So a month went by, and I thought, oh God, maybe I don't know, maybe they didn't want to offer me work. And then a month later, I got an email saying, we need cover for all these dates. Which ones can you do? And I was like, I can do all of them. I can do every single one. So it was a really great way. So be patient, but do start building in that direct link. And what other options? So the other thing is, if practices are saturated at the moment, that patient demand is going somewhere. So you need to follow where that demand is going. So where it's going is out of hours, urgent care, and A&E streaming. So as I mentioned this, I don't know, as if you were gonna kind of pop in and out, but so as I mentioned about A&E streaming, and I know for out of hours providers and urgent care, if you just Google I don't know, out of hours provider Kingston, it comes up with CellDocs, the provider here. And on their website, they've got a recruitment website. So they've got a recruitment email. So if you've emailed in all your documents and you've linked in with them and you're set up with them, you will obviously be their first point of call. So I would definitely say just start being proactive and looking at where else the demand is going so that you can tap into it. What would you say to that, James?
Yeah, absolutely. So locally, our out of hours provider NEMS is always looking for doctors to build relationships with, to help, to make the service more predictable, and to make sure these roles are filled and these times are filled, and they're really, really happy to be contacted, and you just go onto their website and contact them, they'll get back to you. And this is another way of kind of looking at building relationship with out of hours providers, in fact, and they will come to you finding out if you can cover things, which gives you predictability. It's also quite interesting and can lead to other interesting opportunities too, because these things tend to be really well connected with other areas. Somebody's asked if out of hours are saturated or if there's still availability. I think it's really dependent on the area. I can't tell you definite everywhere, but I don't think things are saturated, and I think there is still availability. But at the moment, adjusting your expectations and being flexible with what you're prepared to accept. It may be more nights or late ones, and then you can of course build that in, and once you're on the books, looking at things that might suit you a little bit more.
And I think that's another good point. So in normal circumstances, I've got a couple of friends of mine that normally locum, and they just haven't done, or they haven't been interested in doing out of hours before, but they've done some sessions because that's the only way they found work. And they said actually it was all right, and they will, going forward, they'll probably stick to working in general practice, but it's actually nice to get that experience under their belt and to work in that way. And because everything's still kind of remote working, you're pretty much still doing the same job, but just at a different time. So for me, in my area where the extended access hubs run, so this week is the last week that the hot hubs are running. Then they're going to start opening up the cold hubs again, so the general routine extended access. And they were messaging in the last week, can anyone cover, a few extra days? And I did the weekend for them last weekend, and I was just like, oh God, I couldn't face another long stint there this week. So I was like, no, I can't do it. But then there were other GPs who were like, yeah, I'll do it. So there is definitely that work there. But I think you just got to be a bit proactive in how you're looking for it. I think we've all been so used to, me included, just getting messages and, just having this overload of locum work, where even in my local practices, there were always days that can you do another day? Can you do another day, Serena? And I just got to a point where I was like, no, I really can't. And now it's gone from that to really kind of scarce work. It's okay though, it will get better, but it's just, managing those expectations. And I hope it doesn't go back to that crazy phase, because actually I was seeing changes in patient care and continuity then, because we just couldn't keep up as a profession with that kind of demand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so
I think part of a lot of the changes that have happened through COVID, I mean, as per your previous slide, we've moved to, to at least our practice, we've moved to about 90 to 95% remote consultations. There are lots of efficiency and, providing safe, effective care, but lots of efficiencies that we can make with that mode of delivery. And as I think we move to a hybrid model, which I think is inevitable, and it's something we've been kind of pushing for in the future, that's going to have an impact on the way that we work. Also different types of locum work. I mean, could you do a locum shift from home, for instance? And ways that we're going to have to start becoming a little bit innovative ourselves to engage with practices, to maybe do an online interview, which means that you could work, potentially in other parts of the country if you wanted to. So I think it's a bit of a nerve-wracking, but I think it's a time of creation. It's a time of of moving forwards in general practice and in locum, and all this stuff has been picked, is in discussion within the RCGP, in local ICPs and CCGs and the like. Somebody's written about you protecting your income here. Serena, do you want to expand a little bit?
I can. So essentially, there were two meanings to this. So first is, yes, income protection is really important, and sickness cover and income protection, locums generally think, oh yeah, that's something I should sort out, but they don't tend to. But I think actually with COVID and the kind of situation is, and anyone can get sick, you can get sick seeing patients, having that kind of protection is really important. So I mean, I can't speak for the market in general, but I know through my local manager, we have a partnership with a financial advisor that works with the BMA, and they look at whole of the market. So they're Chase Devin, the guy I know, there's Phil, and I'm happy to share his details, just mention my name and stuff. There's no fee in the consultation, and like I said, they're the only company that work with the BMA, so they're very responsible in terms of the medical market. That I can, you can by all means email him and discuss it, because I think that's important. But the other meaning about protecting your income was, if like me and James, you've got your network of however many practices, then, and say you're working through agency and you're doing all this other stuff, when that other stuff goes and that control goes, you still have that element of, I can look back at my finances and think, well, I know when work is busy, I'm earning X amount. So when those practices get busy again, that's what I'm also going to be working. So I budgeted for that over these few months when it's been quiet. But obviously, if you're just dependent on a third party approach to finding work, and that could be chambers as well, because sometimes with chambers, you're a group of GPs and you're all being offered the same shift. Again, in this kind of climate, I would say avoid competition if you're self-employed, because you need a way of protecting your own income. So now probably is the time to try those other roles like urgent care and out of hours and A&E streaming. Build up that experience, because it might not be something you do forever, but at least you're creating other income streams and experience, and whilst you're kind of working or trying to work now. There's another couple of questions.
The buffer is really important as well, just to plan your income and how much you expect to earn, and when times are lean, to be able to, you can use that time for development, for this kind of things.
So the other thing I was going to say is, when you're contacting practices currently, mention, and there is a question about CVs and contacting practices, so we'll definitely get to that. But what I would advise, and it'd be good to get your thoughts, James, is when contacting practices, say a bit about you. So name drop and mention where you've worked before, and then say, because, networking is everything. And general practice is a very small community. So, if in a way, for a practice manager, if you were good enough to work at so-and-so's practice, you're sure as hell good enough to work at their practice. So just, kind of build that familiarity, I think, is an important way. And I think going forwards now, if you're about to CCT and you want to start, working and building up your locum practice over September, October time, definitely kind of building up that local link, I think, is going to be important.
Experience in the local area. I was a trainee within this local area. I know the referral systems, and all of that kind of stuff means that you can hit the ground running. Also, I'm very proficient. One might say I'm very proficient in System 1 or EMIS, or whatever it is that's being used locally. And again, that just gives people a thing to latch onto. Be like, so this person who's got an interest in X, Y, Z, who has worked in Nottinghamshire for this length of time, who's really and worked with Dr. So-and-so down the road, and I know he's good, so.
Yeah. And then Sophia's asking that she lives in a rural area, works at 5 or 6 different practices, but overall it's been quite a big number of practices, and how would she put that on the CV? So on my CV, it says, like clinical work, locum GP, worked at local practices in the area. I haven't mentioned how many practices I've worked at. I've just put, I work locally in this area. But I don't know, James, have you got any tips?
I put a little explanatory note. I've written, for my first year and a half, I've put locum work mixed with personal development. In practices
that's a good one. Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah, personal development, which for me was seeing the world and developing myself as a person, and some education and that kind of stuff. But I put in practices in Nottinghamshire from in different populations, proficient in, and the sort of things that I experienced through that. So I ended up with a lot of experience in alcohol and drug problems, as well as I worked in quite an affluent areas, worked in another place with lots of social issues. And I sort of put that as sort of a bit of flavour of what I have experienced and what I've gained some proficiency in. So I haven't listed everything, no.
Okay, and then there's a question about what do you think of practices asking locum GPs to do face-to-face consultations only? I would say no. I would say no. What am I, a lamb to the slaughter? Like, why would they do that? That's really weird. Like, all consultations at the moment mainly are telephone triage, video, and if you think you need to bring someone in, then you do face-to-face. I don't know, James, do you have any? Are you doing all face-to-face at the moment? Because I'm not.
No, I'm
doing hardly any face-to-face at the moment.
We're doing 3 to 6 people a day. It's starting to increase, but we haven't done that. And we certainly wouldn't ask a locum to only see face-to-face. And I think you obviously protect your income, but also protect yourself.
Definitely.
To make sure that you are safe, and that they provide you with appropriate safety equipment. And you hear some horror stories of places where practices told locums to bring their own PPE, whereas actually people need that is safety equipment. You wouldn't go to a place and they say, well, you provide your own gloves. You'd never accept that. I think it's really important to know where your boundaries lie.
Oh, sorry, that was me. I was trying to press the chat and then something else happened. Anyway, I think, okay. So my top tip is this website here, NHS Choices. You basically put in your postcode of where you want to work and it lists every single practice in the area. And I love it because then you pick up the phone, you speak to the practice manager and you say all the bits we were talking about. You could also contact training practices on your VTS. The other stuff like WhatsApp groups, agencies, etc. I mean, you're kind of getting into oversaturated territory there. But local LMCs in some areas, like Cambridge, Nottingham, I think the LMCs are really strong and they've really pulled together lots of resources to deploy locums to where they're needed. So I mean,
the Nottinghamshire LMC is fantastic. They've got a database of places that are looking for cover at short notice as well, to help link people in, to help cover the practices, to also help provide work and stability locally. And it's definitely worth asking your local LMC as to what they're doing. They're great. Yeah, they can be really great. The other thing I was going to mention, the direct approach has been I think it's been really helpful for the both of us. But as a little story, one of the best places I worked was because it was opposite my gym, and I thought that actually this place be really convenient for me, and they're absolutely great, and I've worked there a lot and I really love them. But again, I just noticed that it was a GP surgery, googled them, sent them a CV. They said, why yes, we have work.
So mine was
practice, that I work with.
Mine was next to a massive shopping centre, and I still work there now, and I spend a lot of money when I'm not there. Well, I have a problem, but and the others are near my kids' schools, so I just literally, do my surgery, then I go to do pickup. So I just, it's really, and one of them's just like 2 minutes walk from my house, so. I think definitely but if you can't find work locally, just go a bit further afield, but definitely look up on there. This is just a screenshot on things that I've been doing with my locum manager to kind of help facilitate that direct practice to locum within a community. So this launched a few months ago. So in the white box, so the blue box are jobs you've added, and in the request, the local practice is sending out requests to your local GPs to be able to just book and get kind of set up. So that's a way that I've been trying to help more locums that are trying to link in directly with practices access that direct work, and help practices who think I just want someone locally who I can build a regular relationship with to access that without any agency fees or anything like that. Okay, negotiating. So James, I think you've got some really good tips about negotiating. So I'm going to hand this one over to you. And I'm going to just block my video because I think my 5-year-old's on the loose again. So I will be back in 1 minute, but I'll let you take over this bit.
No worries. Left alone. So I think, negotiating is a really important part of when you approach a practice. And I think it is exactly that. It is a negotiation that you of course need them. You need them for work and to provide you with that, but they also need you to be what they need to fill the position, to have the right skills and to have the right sort of approach to it. And going into a negotiating sort of situation, you've got to be thinking about, I suppose the way I tend to put it is what your lines in the sands are. The amount of the amount that you'd expect, and sort of a range of that. And again, flexibility and expectations are really important at this point. So the amount you might expect, but also what you expect to do as part of that. What's the area like? Is it likely that I'm going to see a certain number of patients? Is this a longer clinic, a shorter clinic? And you often hear of stories of very high rates or particularly low rates, and you might actually start thinking about asking your questions as to why that is. Why might this be seem a particularly well paid place? What is it that is happening here? What is it they'll expect me to do that's resulted in that very high rate? And in equally low rates as well, as I think we discussed earlier, Serena, there was a place where it wouldn't usually be a particularly high rate, but an absolutely fantastic, relaxing, supportive place to work, where the workload was actually very well managed. And so you've obviously got these trade-offs. And I think probably the negotiation is something that's super important for any job that you approach, because remember that you are valuable, wonderful people with lots of skills that you can bring to a particular area. And it's a two-way process. And I think if I was to advise people as to if they were going to go into a negotiation, talk to your peers, talk to other people, find out a little bit if people have worked there, and sort of use that group source knowledge.
So one question I was asked recently was by a locum GP that was panicking and was saying, should I just go to the surgery and just say, I'll do it for 50 quid an hour? Do you have any locums? I'll do it for 50. And I was like, well, there's a market rate which is set, and it varies across the country, but there's a general rate which is acceptable, even on the lower side of scale. But if you're going to drop it down that low, you're kind of putting yourself in a position that when things do get busier, which they will, you've kind of shot yourself in the foot, because they're like, well, 6 weeks ago you were doing this for 50 quid an hour, and so what's changed? It's the same job, same practice, just because you've got other offers now. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. I'd say there's a set rate for a reason, and don't panic. It will be fine. And just kind of, we're going to talk a bit about financial support for those. I just want to pick up on a question that actually I'm very sorry I missed before. It's from Amarpreet, who's saying, I mentioned about attaching indemnity cover with the CV. So I should just clarify that list of documents I put, you wouldn't attach them to your CV. You've got your CV, then you've got those other documents, and practice manager. So on My Locum Manager, you can upload those documents, and then when you link with practices now, they can see those if you've authorized them to see it. So everything's in one place if you're then working at new practices. But for you, if you're approaching them by email or in other ways, you would just have essentially a PDF, just like James said. So it's got your CV, a couple of pages or 4 pages if you're James, and then your other documents on one PDF. So you send them one file with everything on it. Now, with regards to indemnity, that's a really important point. So we are covered by state-backed indemnity. So if anything happens to a patient, clinically you are represented just like you would be as a hospital trainee. But the difference is, if you're working as a locum GP, or actually if you're working in primary care, you're not covered under that scheme for anything that's deemed non-NHS work. And that could be something really simple, like you signed a marathon runner's letter to run and then something happened to them. Or it could be taxi medicals, or anything that's deemed as non-NHS, social housing letters, all those kinds of things. So what I would say is, so what I do and what a lot of GPs do is they call up the indemnity providers and they arrange an additional cover, which is just a few £100s, which covers you for any professional allegations against you, or if you need professional representation, any GMC referrals that might happen, any cases that are non-clinical, so it could be racial, sexual, any kind of misconduct like that, those kinds of cases. So I would definitely say, even if you're going in for a salaried post, you probably want to check what kind of cover they have for you, because you might come under their practice scheme. But I think there's no harm in getting out a personal protection. I mean, it's gone from, I was paying when I first qualified £6,000 a year, and now it's a few £100s, and it's definitely worth it for that peace of mind.
And I think if you're working, as part of sort of setting yourself up as a locum, it's important to make sure you are responsible to make sure that you're covered. And because, by the nature of it, you're going to be bouncing around, speak to the MDU, the MPS, the MDDUS or whoever, and just say, this is what I'm doing. What would you recommend? Because they want to make sure that, that you're covered, and you want to make sure that you're covered.
Yeah. So we're now going to summarise like a few of our top tips. So James, you go. What were yours? So remember, top tips about finding work.
Yeah. So my top tips about finding work is, I think, to go with a bit of the flow and the ebbs and flows of this sort of work, to build in a buffer, which, if you don't need it after a while and you've built up a bit more, is you can spend it on whatever you need. But to build up that buffer while things are good, while you have the time, and in a similar way to when you work as a locum, you put some away so that you can go on holiday for a couple of weeks because you're not earning any money during that time, and then to not panic during this time, and then just use this time to sort of build your strategy and build your business, in fact. Yeah.
So mine would be, if you want to find practices directly, NHS Choices is a really good website. I'd say, I think you said this about managing expectations, and I copied it and put it on my list. But I think just accepting that, to be honest, we're not, as self-employed GPs, we're not the only ones that are really affected, actually. And it is hard, and I really appreciate the uncertainty, but healthcare is probably the most stable industry currently to work in, and you guys will be really busy come September, October with locum work or any type of work you're going to do in primary care, because it's just going to go back to that, trying to meet that demand. So I think now at the time is about getting proactive and starting to build your practice database and starting to create those community links. I think going forward, practices are going to be less likely to want a different person every week, because you're going to have to be inducted, you're going to have to undergo some kind of safety training and assessment for COVID. So building up that regular relationship is really important. I think it's also, we covered about other types of work, so exploring out of hours, A&E streaming, and now's definitely a good time to do it, because to be honest, if you walked straight out of CCT into lots of different practices for locum work, you probably wouldn't ever explore that opportunity. So it's definitely worthwhile thinking about getting it under your belt now.
Yeah, definite top tip. And again, with the last webinar we did, diversifying your career is more secure, in fact. So if you're having lots of different strings to your bow, if you've got lots of different interests and things that can provide an income or even just occupation to keep yourself going when times are more difficult, actually that diversification is really important. I mean, so you and I, Serena, do all kinds of different things, and I would absolutely say that going through a fellowship, doing all these different things in my portfolio keeps me really grounded in the profession, keeps me, keeps my kind of emotional and kind of forward motion during the week, and having lots of different things to look forward to, working with lots of different teams, lots of different professionals. It's all super stimulating. So a massive top tip would be diversify and find your niche. And you can use some of this time when perhaps there's less of the clinical session to find that niche and do a bit of training or do a bit of exploration of that.
Yeah. So on that, I was going to actually say, like, a couple of things you could do now. Hopefully I can post this link in the chat. I was looking for this earlier. So there's an NHS England coaching scheme that's available to everybody at the moment. And you might think, I don't need coaching, I just want money and a job. But actually, it's a really good scheme. So normally you'd pay about £400-500 to access something like this, and right now it's absolutely free. And I did the London Deanery coaching when I was an ST3 and just about CCT.
I did Nottingham one.
Did you? Oh my God, James, we've got like so many weird similarities.
It was great. It just pointed me at the direction, because I was meandering, and they were like, "How about this?" And I was like, oh, "Brilliant!" It's called.
So I went there thinking, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know if I want to see patients for the rest of my life. I don't know if I want to be a GP. I'm not sure what I want to do. So I went there thinking she'll tell me what I need to do. So I went there and she was like, so, what do you think, Serena? What direction do you want to take? And I was like, I don't know. I thought you're going to tell me that. That's why I'm here. And she was like, no, it's about like getting your underlying things. But it was brilliant, because over that course of time, where I am now actually started from thinking the way she was recommending I start thinking about my career. So I'm going to put a link in for an article. Can I put it? Do I put it in the Q&A box? Where do I put the link?
You put it in the chat box.
Oh, the chat box. Okay. Oh, here we go. So
I couldn't agree more. I didn't realise you'd been pointed on that direction by coach. I owe so much to the various coaches I've had in my life, and there is national one as well. At the moment, I can't think what it's called, but we'll try and send that out. But there's also local schemes as well, and as part of the New to Practice offer, that all newly qualified GPs in the first couple of years will receive, there is mentoring as part of that and coaching.
Okay.
And I couldn't recommend taking it up high enough.
And so I was going to say, and also, if you do want to work directly with practices and you want help with your pension forms and invoice and stuff, you can check out My Locum Manager. All first fives get a discount from the RCGP for it. So make your money back off your RCGP subscription with the discount. Oh, someone said I can't see the link. So I posted a link for the GP Online article.
You accidentally put it into the...
Oh, sorry. Did I put it in the panelists? Sorry, guys. I'm trying to navigate.
Wrap up, so we'll pop it in at the end, hey?
Yeah, sorry. I'm trying to multitask, and I'm just surrounded by these things. So it's really hard to concentrate.
You're surrounded by bears. I'm surrounded by guitars.
Yeah. Okay, so while we're doing the Q&A, so sorry, I was saying, if you want help with your pension and finding an accountant and support and stuff, you're more than welcome to sign up to My Locum Manager. That's what I was trying to say, and now I'm going to try and send those links. So the GP Online article I'm trying to send everybody, but I can't seem to press the button. Oh, there we go. Has got links to the Cameron Fund, the NHS England coaching scheme, and the other one that you and I can't remember the name of. So it summarises all those things about helping and getting support, particularly financial aid if you need it.
The coaching people will ring you within 48 hours, in fact. So it's
they're really good. They're really good. And the resources I talked about, so there's a guide on there about starting as a locum and the CV template you can download from. Have I sent that to everybody now? Yeah. And then it was one of income protection. Shall I just put Phil's email on there and you can email him if anyone wants to talk about income protection? I need to just find his email. Go for it, James. Sorry, I'm just.
Well, I mean, so I think we've so as a sentence message, time is up. So.
Oh gosh, that's gone so quick.
I know it's gone so quickly. We really hope this has been helpful to you. And actually, Serena, if you let me just share my screen, if that would be.
Yeah.
Okay. A second.
Yeah, go for it. There you go.
Cool. So one second. Again, technology here. Oh, so I messed that up. 1 second. Okay, well, we'll just finish off like this. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming, and thank you, Serena, for giving up your time for the third time to come and speak to us about this.
So much fun. I was saying to Azza, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for coming. I mean, it's been brilliant. And hopefully we've managed to share some words of wisdom and some pearls with this. The RCGP is so interested in helping to support our members, both the first fives, mid-careers and beyond, throughout this difficult time. We hope there's been some nuggets of help here. If you've enjoyed it, please fill in the feedback. You can also follow the First 5 committee on Twitter as well, and we'll send out those details with when we can send you the link to the YouTube video. Please share this video with other people as well, and just be there for each other. We're here for you. Be there for each other, and we can get through this together, and we'll come out stronger for it, because general practice is amazing. You're all amazing. And thank you very much. Have a great evening, and we shall see you at another event really soon. Thanks, Serena. Oh, and very, very quickly, and again, last but not least, Bryn and Azza, who have been in the background, thank you so much for all your hard work.
You guys should like show your faces and at least acknowledge all the hard work you've put in to all this, because it looks like me and James have done everything, but actually behind the scenes, you guys. Bryn's shy in his tie. He's overdressed for the webinar.
It's not about me. It's not about me. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Bryn and Azza. Thanks for having me, guys.